new, the understanding of what these things are. They're just observing. The science is observing the facts. They're doing testing, analyzing what is there already. But we have been given God's divine word to give us guidance in how we function as his creatures. The wisdom writer instructs us to guard our hearts above all else. Why? Everything we do, it flows from our heart. Last week, we looked at how we can apply CBT, which is cognitive biblical therapy, to help us deal with our mental health challenges. I want to show you that there is hope in the scriptures for our mental health. As we look for the solutions that the scriptures give us for good mental health, I want to show you a holistic approach. Last week, I focused on the soul. That is the inner life of who we are, where our thoughts, our emotions, and our desires are governed. We looked at the inner life and how God's word helps us to navigate that. Today, I want to speak to you about the body. I want to speak to you in how our body is important, and how we treat our body is important in dealing with our mental health. I want to look at our physical makeup. I want to show you how the body contributes to good mental health and how it can contribute to poor mental health. As I have said previously, God has designed us to have layers to us. We have a physical body, an immaterial soul, and a living spirit. Now, although there are different parts of us, they work together cohesively. We are one as human beings. We're not fragmented into parts. We're dissecting the different parts of us, but as humans, we don't call ourselves a certain part. We are one. We are human beings that encompasses all of these parts. All three layers work together. And what happens in our soul and spirit can affect our body, and what happens in our body can affect our soul. So I want to look at some ways we could look after our bodies to look after our mental health. I want to start off by looking at one character in Scripture as a foundation before we start. I want to show you how God dealt with this individual who was having clearly a mental health breakdown. And the story is found in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 2 to 8. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." So Jezebel, if you don't know the context, she's not talking about the God of Israel. She's talking about her gods. And she said, if I don't take your life, if I don't kill you by this time tomorrow, may the gods that I worship kill me. If I don't destroy your life like you destroyed the life of all of these prophets. Elijah, verse 3, was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat under it, and prayed. Listen to what he prayed, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and he fell asleep. At once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and do what? And eat." He looked around, and there by his head was a bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time, and he touched him again and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up, he ate and drank. Strengthened by the food, underline that. Strengthened by the food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. This is one of the most relatable passages in Scripture. You know, when we see people who are very strong in their faith, men of God, and not this fake man of God that we see of our modern day. I'm talking about a real man of God. A man who had a relationship with God, a man who trusted God. I mean, Elijah was a man that God told him, hey, speak to the sky and say, you will not rain for 2 years. And he did that in faith, by faith. He prayed and the rains stopped for 2 years. But we have this man of faith, man of God, in a moment of crisis. And you know, when we read stories like this, we look up to people like this. But we tend to forget they are human beings just as we are. Isn't that what James tells us in the New Testament? James chapter 5 verse 17 in the Amplified. Elijah, speaking of this man we read about, was a man with a nature like ours, with the same physical, mental, and spiritual limitations and shortcomings. And he prayed intensely for it not to rain, and it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. As faith-filled as Elijah was, he is human like us. Because when we read stories like Elijah doing all of these miracle signs and wonders, we somehow can begin to conceive in our minds he had some superhuman capacity, that he is not the same like ours. That's why it is dangerous to worship and idolize human beings. Doesn't matter what kind of superstar they are, doesn't matter what kind of power people have, what kind of money people have, we are not called to worship people. We have to be careful in idolizing men and women. They are human beings like us, and that's what James wants to show the readers. He had the same limitations that you and I possess. He's not immune from the pain and suffering of life. You know, in the previous chapter of 1 Kings chapter 18, he took on 450 prophets and he killed 450 prophets of Baal, and he slaughtered them all. He called down fire from the sky. You know the story. And all of the 450 prophets of Baal, he wanted to show who the true living God is. He wanted to show the Israelites who were idolizing other gods. God, Yahweh, is the true one. And he said, choose today whom you will worship. I want to show you, this is the prophet that went through this season. And as he's there, he calls down fire and God hears his prayer and he shows the nation that God is truly the God who is the God of the universe. And the very next chapter, he's running for his life from a woman. He killed 450 men, but he's running from one threat from a woman telling him, I will take your life. Doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. The great prophet was afraid. The great prophet had enough. He was burnt out. And the prophet who prayed for fire to come down is now praying to the heavens that he might die. Very perplexing for me. The previous verse, praying for fire to come down. The next chapter, he's praying for his life to end. Do you know what's the irony? When we struggle with our mental health, sometimes we think that we'll never get out of the situation that we're in, or we interpret our situation wrongly. Do you know what's very ironic? He's actually one of 2 people in the entire scriptures that never died, but were taken up before they died. So the very thing he prayed for, God actually bypassed and took him into glory. He viewed his situation as hopeless, that I am not going to recover from this. When you keep reading the story, he actually thought he is the only genuine and true prophet left. And God said, I have plenty who have not bowed down to Baal. You're not the only one that I have. But we interpret our situation wrongly because of the pain of what we're going through. You know, Moses, arguably one of the greatest leaders of all time, he prayed that he also might die. Let's go to Numbers chapter 11, verse 10 to 15. You can read all these in its context, but listen to what he said. Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance of their tents. And the Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you, that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms, as a nurse carries an infant, to the land you promised on oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all of these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all of these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you're going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, and do not let me face my own ruin." Leaders understand his frustration. He's leading all these people. Before they complained, "We don't have manna. We don't have food." So God gives them food. He gives them bread. And they say, "What is that?" That's what manna means. And now they're saying, "Oh, we miss meat. We wish we went back to slavery." I mean, he's just frustrated. He had 40 years of this. And he's saying, "I just had enough." He's saying, "They're not my kids." He's saying, "God, I didn't give birth to them. Why are you putting all of these burdens on me?" Moses faced a moment of frustration, and it got too much for him. Church, they were human beings like you and I, and they faced the same challenges that you and I face. Because one of the strategies of the enemy that whispers in our minds is that our situation is unique, and that there is something wrong with us, and that there is something very, very horribly wrong with us, that no one has been through what we have been through. We are the exception to the rule, that we will not recover from this. It's part of the strategy of the enemy. And next week, I do not want you to miss out, because I'm going to talk about the Spirit. But I want you to see that people who are great in faith, actually mentioned in the great book of faith, Hebrews chapter 11, went through moments of frustration. Back to Elijah. Do you know what's fascinating is how God handles a depressed, suicidal prophet of his. After Elijah falls asleep, complains, "Kill me, I've had enough, God. Kill me. I'm not better than any of my ancestors. I say, I'm done. I've exhausted every resource. My tank is empty. Just take me." And he goes down. He leaves. This is how you know he's done. He tells his servant, "Wait here," and he goes one more day into the wilderness. He's saying, "I want to make sure that no one finds me. I just want to be, that's it. I'm gone. I'm done." And he lays down in the middle of nowhere under a bush. After he falls asleep under the tree, an angel wakes him up. And notice what the angel did. He didn't sit down and say to him, "Hey, let's have a conversation. I thought you were the man of God. I thought you were the one that went and helped all of these people. You were the one just the day before. You were the one that called down fire. You were the one that showed the people, choose this day, trust in God. What happened to you, Elijah? What a hypocrite you are." Is that what the angel did? What did he do? He simply woke him up and he told him, "Eat and drink." The Lord provided food and drink for the prophet because he was weak in his body and he needed food. The exhausted prophet eats and drinks, and then he returns back to sleep. The angel wakes him up again and he tells him, "Eat and drink." And the Bible tells us that he was strengthened by the food. You see, the way the Lord dealt with Elijah is to first ensure that he's physically strengthened in the body before he later on speaks to him in his soul. God knows how he programmed us and how he designed us. That moment, what Elijah needed was not a conversation. What he needed was to eat. He needed to eat. He needed to look after his body because he was weak. and he needed to be strengthened by the food. You know, when we're struggling in our mental health, we often neglect the body. We despise the body. We think the body is irrelevant when it comes to our mental health. So we either don't eat enough or we overeat wrong foods. They call it emotional eating. We can go on two extremes. For Elijah to continue, he had to be strong in his body too. You know, researchers now are discovering that the different foods and drinks that we have contribute to good or poor mental health. Interestingly, diets that are healthy are linked to reduced risk of depression, and diets that are refined in carbohydrates such as snack foods, they can increase the symptoms of depression. This is proven clinically. It reminds me of Daniel, who said this in Daniel chapter 1, verse 12 to 16. Please test your servant for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who ate the royal food, and treat your servant in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this, and he tested them for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food of the king, the choice food of meats and everything, wine and all of these things. So the God took away their choice food and the wine, and they were to drink, and he gave them vegetables instead. Very interesting. Now, although Daniel and his friends, they had a spiritual reasons why they didn't want to partake in the king's food, what we can see is the impact on food in their health. Do you know what's interesting? They became more alert, more aptitude. I know God did that as well, but it says that they were bright, they were healthy, and they were wise than any other person in the kingdom. Daniel simply said, hey, just give me water and vegetables. Listen to what the healthdirect.gov.vic website says. According to them, for good mental health, it is important to drink plenty of water. You need water to make neurotransmitters, the chemicals that transmit signals between brain cells, and hormones that control the process of the body and brain. Even mild dehydration can make you irritable and affect your mental performance. End of quote. Another example is serotonin, known as the happy chemical, is primarily made in our gut. 90% of it is made in our gut. Some researchers say 95% of it. This chemical that impacts our mood, our happiness, primarily it's made in the gut. So researchers are saying that what we eat affects that chemical. Serotonin affects our mood amongst many other functions, and not enough of it can lead to depression and anxiety. There are certain foods that we eat that can increase this feel-good chemical. Eggs, salmon, cheese, turkey, pineapples, and you can do your research. So many other foods that actually improve this chemical. Therefore, eating and drinking right helps with good mental health, which improves our mental health condition. You never thought that what you eat matters about your mental health. Well, it does. And today I want you to understand your body's role in your mental health. The next thing I want to show you is the benefit of exercise. 3 John chapter 2 says this. Verse 2, sorry. There's only one chapter. Beloved, I pray that in every way you may succeed and prosper and be in good health physically, just as I know your soul prospers spiritually. You know, John is writing to this elder, this leader of this church named Gaius. 3 John is a letter to him. As the elder of the church, he says, he begins his letter in this way. Gaius, I pray for you in this, that as I know that you're prospering spiritually, do not neglect your body. I also want you to be healthy physically. And this is an important point that Paul mentions. Us Christians are very good at strengthening the soul, but we are horrible at being healthy in the body. And we see a lot of pastors setting a bad example as they let go of themselves, including myself. You know, research actually shows, Babana research, that many pastors are very poor in their physical health. They neglect it. And when they studied and did a whole research on interviewing thousands of pastors as to why that is, they found that it was their poor mental health that was affecting their eating. But the eating made the condition worse. And lack of exercise was contributing to that. Paul said this to Timothy. 1 Timothy 4:8 says this. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. Every preacher, including myself, quote this verse to show the importance of spiritual exercise. But we neglect the first portion, don't we? Notice what Paul doesn't say. He doesn't say that physical training or exercise is useless and not beneficial. He said, no, it has some value. The comparison that he's making, he's saying compared to your spiritual exercise, spiritual disciplines of you reading your word, spending time in the presence of the Lord, these things will benefit your eternity. But he still says that exercise and training physically has benefits. We all know that exercise has physical benefits. We can see it. If someone said to you, I exercise, and your eye tells you they don't, you're not going to believe what they say. You're going to believe what your eye sees. And we get that, how exercise directly impacts our physical health. It changes, our body changes when we're exercising. But did you know it can also help in your mental health? Exercise has actually been found to help reduce stress, boost memory, give energy, improve concentration, reduce symptoms of mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, help recovery of mental health conditions as well. Exercise causes the brain to release these feel-good chemicals like endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin. All of this has to do with our emotions. So how we feel in our mental health, our attitude, when you get up, the energy that you have, all of that, exercise directly impacts that. The benefits of exercise are many, and I encourage you to research these things. I myself have been exercising for a while. And although the workout portion of the gym is not fun, and especially when you have a gym partner like this muscly man named Abel, doesn't let you miss one rep, always saying, nah, you've got one more. And I try to trick him sometimes. I'm like, Abel, we've done 3. He's like, no, this is your second one. It's not fun, but I promise you, afterwards, I get energy. It sets the tone for me to have a productive day. You feel good afterwards. Gets me alert and productive. And it doesn't have to be gym. I'm not saying do gym. I'm saying do something in the form of exercise that will help you towards your mental health. You could go for walks. You could ride a bike, which is a lost art in our modern generation. You can play sports, go hiking, do swimming, do whatever that gets your body functioning and moving. I love going to the beach. It's therapeutic for me. I don't know about you. I just go to on the pier. I get my coffee. I look on the water. Just clarity in my mind. A lot of the times, that's where I go to meet with God and speak with God. Do whatever it takes. Go out and physically do something that gets your body moving. So exercise gives you benefit towards your mental health challenges. The next thing I want to show is the benefit of sleep and the benefit of rest. God designed our bodies to need sleep and rest by design. By design, He programmed and wired our bodies to need sleep. Let me give you fun facts. Did you know the average person who lives about 80 years spends 26 years of their life sleeping? 26 years of your life. Now, let me give you something that's even more funnier than that. An additional 7 years is spent trying to sleep. When I read that, I'm like, I don't think I have much of that problem. I don't have a problem trying to sleep. But we spent 33 years of our life sleeping. That's crazy for me. Compare that to working. The average person spends 13 years of their life working. Now, don't count the years. I'm saying the actual labor work that we do. The researchers have said we work approximately 13 years. Sleep and rest are spoken about positively and negatively in the scriptures. The negative ways, you know it. It speaks about laziness, not willing to work. That's the negative way that it speaks about sleeping. Positively, sleep is seen as a blessing from God. For example, it is the fruit of the one who trusts in God's wisdom in Proverbs chapter 3. Listen to what he says, chapter 3, verse 24. When you lie down, this is to the person who is wise, trusting God's wisdom. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. I love that. I love that. Sweet sleep. Not unrest, not going from one side of your bed to the other. No, just having a peaceful sleep. This is a blessing from God, the proverb writer tells us. You see, our sleep can be sweet or it can be painful. And you know, when we're facing mental health challenges, sleep can be very difficult for us. We might distract ourselves throughout the day if we're challenged with mental health challenges and keep ourselves busy so that we're not remembering the things that we're going through. But when you go on your bed at night, there is no escaping. You're confronted with all the thoughts you've been avoiding. You're confronted with the reality of your life, and sleep becomes very difficult when you begin to think and meditate upon your circumstances. But I want to encourage you today that sweet sleep is not something that we have when everything is going good in our life, but we can have sweet sleep in the midst of chaos. I want to show you that in the midst of everything going turmoil in your life, when you're facing dark moments and mental health challenges, God can still give you sweet sleep. That's what David discovered in Psalm chapter 3, verse 5. He said this, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. The NLT says this, because the Lord watches over me. I lie down, what does he do? And sleep. I will wake up again. This is not wishful thinking. This is the confidence that David has. I will lie down. I will wake again. Why? Because I know my life is not in my enemies. Do you know what's fascinating? David said this when his own son is hunting to take his life, to kill him. He's going from cave to cave and he's trying to run from his own son who has taken the kingdom, taken his wife and made a public spectacle of David. He has done so many messes happening in his family. What is David saying? David's saying, I'll still sleep. I'll still wake up. I'm not going to keep my eyes up wondering, will my son kill me? Would all the men that he's sending to chase me, will they take my life? No, he says, no, God watches over me when I sleep. Do you know what's, let me encourage you with this. We need sleep. God doesn't sleep. So when we sleep, the one who doesn't sleep watches over you. He doesn't need sleep, my friends. He's always watching over us so we can have that confidence. It was one of the darkest times of his family's life. But he understood that when he lies down, he can sleep because the Lord watches over him. Listen to what he said in the next chapter. Psalm chapter 4, verse 8. He said this, in peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. David understood that his capacity to sleep is a blessing from God. You know, we know that Jesus also slept in the midst of a literal storm. Matthew chapter 8, verse 24. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. Very perplexing thing for me, because these are fishermen who know the sea, and they're afraid for their life. They're saying, we're going to die. What is Jesus doing? Sweet sleep. And it's uncomfortable. The waves, I don't know if you've been on a boat in high waves. I mean, you will feel the nausea. And everything is happening. Water is coming into the boat. They're trying to take the water out, and they are finding Jesus sleeping. You see, Jesus knew that the storm will pass. Something they didn't know, but Jesus knew the storm will pass. And that is something that we need to hear today. Your storm, in your mental health challenge will pass. You know, when we face something for a long time, it doesn't seem like it will pass. It doesn't seem like there will be another light at the end of the tunnel. But I promise you, the storm doesn't come to last. It will pass. One of the things I thank God for is gifting me this capacity to sleep. You can ask my wife. As soon as my head touches the pillow, I'm gone. I'm knocked out. I don't know where I switched off. And she says, how the heck are you sleeping? When you are just going through how are you sleeping? I don't know it myself. It's a gift. It's a blessing. I don't know if it's a man thing, but I can just, it is? Okay, got a confirmation here. I can just switch it off and I can just sleep. And I thank God for that. But sweet sleep is something that God can give us no matter what we are facing in our lives, in our mental health. Our bodies need sleep to recharge and recover. You know, sleep improves your memory, your learning, your attention, and your brain function. And there's so many more benefits that scientists are discovering of sleep. Lack of sleep, on the other hand, or sleep deficiency, leads to poor decision making, inability to control emotions and behavior, inability to cope with changes in our life. Sleep deficiency has also been linked with depression, suicide, and risk-taking behavior. So all of this because of a lack of sleep. I don't know if you've been sleep deprived before. I mean, you're very irritable. You don't want anyone to get next to you. You're very irritable. And that is because we are lacking, our body is lacking the sleep that it needs. It can also cause mood swings. It can get you angry and impulsive, feel sad, and have a lack for motivation. Rest is equally important. Mark chapter 6, verse 30 to 32 says this. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all that they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, let us go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while. He said this because there were so many people coming and going, but Jesus and his apostles didn't have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. I love that. Jesus, he sent his 12 apostles. He said 2 by 2. He said in partners, go and preach the gospel. Go and heal the sick. I empower you. I anoint you. And they went and did ministry for a while. And they're coming back now and they're reporting. They're reporting to Jesus what had happened. They came back and they told him all of the good news that happened. And now Jesus recognizes that they now need to take a pause. They now need to rest and take a break. He wanted them to rest. Rest is also important for our mental health. Work is good, and God, I told you, it's a blessing to work. We cannot be lazy. But God in the beginning already set a law in motion. He worked for 6 days, but on the 7th day he rested. The rest is not because God needs rest. It's a motion, it's a law he's putting down in creation. That we are programmed not just to be working and be doing something all the time, but rest is part of our design. And if we don't have enough rest, it will impact our mental health. Church, there will always be work that needs to get done. I mean, I finish the garden and then I look up on my garage, I see a crack thing on my garage. I'm like, oh, I need to do that. And then when I attend to something, another job comes. Work will always be there. There's walls I need to paint, cabinets that need to get fixed. There's a lot of jobs that my wife has lined up. But work is always going to be there. There's always going to be meetings that you need to have, people that you need to visit, overtime work that your boss will constantly give you. You will always have that. But we will suffer in our mental health if we don't have a Sabbath and a rest. You know, this week my sister Melat was moving and Abel and I went to help her. And we went to hire a small truck from a hiring company. And the man is a small business. He was there. And it wasn't pleasant dealing with the person. But I went with him because he was the cheapest. I'm like, a good deal? So I went anyways. But when we went there, Abel highlighted something. He's like, bro, did you hear him? He said, I work for 7 days. He works 7 days. I kid you not. His eyes, there's dark bags around his eyes. And no wonder why he's very irritable. And when you see the comments in the business, that's what they comment. The guy is not pleasant to deal with. But why? I can see it. He's tired. He's exhausted. He needs rest. So we need a Sabbath. We need a time to take a break, to chill, to recharge, to spend time with God. That's part of our Sabbath, our rest. You know, they went away to a secluded place by themselves, away from the crowd, to rest. And do you know what's interesting? This was prescribed by Dr. Jesus. It wasn't their idea. Jesus himself said, no, the crowd will be there. We need to go right now and rest. Because if you don't rest, you cannot continue on in this ministry. So I want you to incorporate rest in your busy schedule because your body needs it. Your soul needs it. How about medicine? Next, I want to talk about medicine. What is the role of medication regarding our mental health? No matter how much we trust the Lord and believe in Him, we all have gone to the doctors at some point in our life due to a sickness. Then what do? We take the medication that the doctors prescribe. That doesn't mean we don't trust God to heal us, nor that our faith is weak. That's why you're going to the doctor. You broke your leg, you should pray for healing. Why are you going to the doctor? We don't say that, do we? We don't have that unrealistic expectation. Part of the way God heals us is by using medicine and doctors and gifting them to extend His healing powers. You know, yesterday I had a massive migraine as I was at home. I don't know if it's the heat, whatever it was. Do you know what I did? Got Nurofen. Within the hour, the migraine was completely gone. We all take medication, don't we, when we need it. There's medications that help us in our physical bodies. We don't have a problem with understanding that, but we struggle to understand the role of medication. But let me just, before I go there, let's go to 1 Timothy 5:23, and I want to show you something very, very interesting. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 23. Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illness. Paul is writing this to young Timothy. Water in the ancient world was often contaminated with many impurities. Timothy, because of drinking only water, developed some kind of frequent illness connected with his stomach. So it's a well-known thing that Paul had to address in the letters. And he said his advice was this, very interesting. He tells him, drink a little wine to help you with your stomach and your illness in your stomach that's causing you sickness frequently. Paul didn't tell him to pray for divine healing. That's what I want you to see. Nor to send forth his handkerchief that we know Paul sent forth, and wherever people held the handkerchief, and people still do that today as a pretext, they use that verse. And wherever the handkerchief was, people were healed. He didn't prescribe that. What Paul did, he pointed to the natural remedy that was available for them at that time. David Guzik, one of the Bible commentators, he said this regarding this passage, and I quote, "If it is God's will for all to be healed right now, then Paul and the Holy Spirit who inspired him here led Timothy into sin, calling him to look to a natural remedy instead of divine healing. God uses natural remedies and the work of doctors in healing as well as supernatural power of the Holy Spirit. They don't contradict one another." End of quote. Paul says this about Luke. Colossians 4:14. Luke, the beloved physician, greets you, as does Demas. Luke was a physician. He referred to him as a physician. Luke is the one that wrote your gospel, the Gospel of Luke. He's the one that authored the book of Acts. But by profession, he was a medical doctor, not a doctor of theology. You know, there's doctors now of many things. He wasn't a doctor of theology. He was a medical doctor, a physician. God is not against physicians. He gifts the minds of physicians. I just get the way that God blesses the minds, and I thank God for them. But He blesses their minds and He uses them as an extension of His healing. What I want us to understand, however, is that it is not only true for our physical sickness, but there are gifted experts that can help us identify the causes of our mental health challenges. Now, we understand the benefit of medicine for our physical body, but we really struggle to comprehend medication for mental health challenges. So now I want to leave a disclaimer here. What I'm about to tell you is not medical advice. I have to protect myself. It's not medical advice, what I'm giving you. The next statement that I'm making is simply my opinion, Yoyo's opinion. You can't twist that. I've already said it. It's on record. All right? This is not medical advice. This is Yoyo's opinion. I've had a change of mind in this area of thinking. I used to be very, very certain way of thinking. And as you learn and grow, you change your position. I changed my position in this area. As I read more, as I studied more, and you can't blame me because I never did science in high school. So I don't understand a lot of scientific stuff. But as I'm learning, as I'm educating myself, I'm learning more things. And a few years back, I did a first aid course on mental health. So the whole first aid was how to identify mental health conditions. And the person running the course was a Christian man, and I asked all the tough questions that I need to ask. And he helped me in my understanding. And my position has changed, but it's on the caution side. My position is that there are medications that can help alleviate mental health challenges as they bring balance in the brain and replace chemicals that are low. So there are medications, all of these emotion-causing chemicals, serotonin, all of these things, we can go low. Literally, they've done brain scans and have discovered you can be low on all these chemicals. And they've designed drugs that can replace those particular chemicals in our brain. Now, I've read stories of many pastors and men of faith, very transparent, who struggled in their mental health. And they prayed, they fasted, but they said they had a breakthrough when they got the right medication to support their mental health condition. I've also read that this is a very new area in the science field. That medication for our body, plenty of years, hundreds of years of research. But medication for our mental health, it's a fairly new area. And a lot of the drugs are experimental and with many side effects. So please speak to a health profession and take medicine with caution and do your due diligence on the effects of that medication and how it can impact you. I'm not going to say take it or don't take it. I've learned that it does help, but I am on the side of more caution. And this is what advice I will give as a pastor. I would say try every other form of treatment, like talk therapy, seeing a counselor, psychologist, and exhaust your resources before you go to medication. Let medication be a last resort. And I was just watching this man who did an experiment. You've probably seen the video around. And he went to, I think, a dozen psychiatrists. Psychiatrists are the one who can prescribe medication. And he gave them the same symptoms, each of them the same. He didn't change. And it was just an experiment. And what was interesting for me, you see, when you go with your body, they can check signs and stuff. But it was just by what he said to them, they all diagnosed him with different conditions. Bipolar, psychosis in this area. And one person said depression. And they all gave him different medication. And that showed me I was more on the caution side. I mean, there needs to be more research in this area. There needs to be more work that is to be done. So that is why I say, don't take this advice from me. Speak to your doctor and do your research before you go on this thing. But I have also seen that there are certain mental health conditions that are more severe that definitely need medication. And I've seen that, and I have advised people to see the doctor and speak to them. Lastly, I want to show you that we need one another. We're talking about the body, yeah? We need each other. 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Listen to what Paul said to the Thessalonian church. And we urge you, brothers and sisters, warn those who are idle and disruptive. Encourage the disheartened. Help the weak. Be patient with everyone. You see, we cannot see each other's mental health condition. I can't see Barakat and see what he's thinking and what he's going through. God didn't design us that way. We have physical limitations. I can only see the outward of BK. So we have to notice the signs of struggles and address it. Paul urged the Thessalonian believers to be there for each other. He said, encourage the disheartened, help the weak, be patient with everyone. When we notice our friends, our family members going through a challenge, we need to ask, are you okay? We need to be there for them. If we see behavior that is out of character, a change in their routine, a change in their weight, gaining or losing, a change in hygiene, a change in social activities, reach out and be there for them. We as Christians should be the most compassionate group of people, caring for the suffering of others, not judgmental and dismissive. We should seek to be compassionate and understanding. And I believe that in this area, mental health, we are very dismissive. We do explain it in a simplistic way, and we don't seek to understand the pain and the suffering of others. When as Christians, we should be. There's other place in the book of, I believe, Romans, where he tells, be patient with those who are weak in their faith. I mean, we need to understand each other more than everyone. You know, Jesus, one of his main motivation was compassion. Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. When he saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion and pity for them, because they were dispirited and distressed, like sheep without a shepherd. So he went and had understanding. Church, we must do better, especially in the area of mental health. We must have compassion at the struggle of others and not have expectations that they are to deal with their challenges with the same way that we're dealing with it. Hopefully what I've shown you is that we're complex and person to person deals with things differently. And we need to understand that and have grace upon each other and be patient with one another. As you know, it is easy to comment on the struggles of others, but it is different when you're going through it yourself. Let's be there for one another and fight the good fight of faith together. When our brother and sister faces a moment of weakness, a moment of a challenge, we need to be there carrying their burden. Remember what I told you, what Moses went through in Numbers 11? I want you to see what happened later on. Actually, I don't have the passage here, but do you know what happened later on in Numbers 11? Moses, what did he say? God, I've had enough. How can I carry all this by myself? Do you know what the remedy that God gave him? He said, go and select 70 men, and I'll put the same spirit that is on you, I'll put it on them, and they'll help you to carry the load. What was the remedy that God gave him to that moment of crisis? He said, I have given you brothers and sisters. I have given you people that can walk alongside you. And church, that's what God does with us. Remember in 1 Samuel, what happened? 1 Samuel chapter 22 verse 2. Let's quickly go to it. 1 Samuel chapter 22 verse 2. Everyone who was suffering hardship, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became captain over them. And they were about 400 men with him. These were the men who were suffering many, many challenges. What did they do? They went to David in the cave. Do you know what's interesting? All of these men, it seems hopeless here, their condition. They don't have money. They're depressed and all of these things. They go to David. Do you know they become the strongest fighters and warriors alongside David? They became known as David's fighting men. What made them have common ground? The suffering that they all endured. And David was there for them. And they helped David and he helped them. We must be like Barnabas. Do you know what Barnabas' name meant? Son of encouragement. Barnabas was known in the early church for being an encourager. When no one believed Paul, he went alongside Paul and he encouraged him. He said, Paul, I believe you've had a real encounter with God, with Jesus. And he convinced the church about his condition. And he said, he's a true believer. He went around and encouraged people wherever he was. We need to be sons and daughters of encouragement and be there for one another. As I finish today's message, what I hope that you have seen today is the importance of taking care of our bodies in our battle with mental health. Remember, it's all connected. I hope that you do not neglect your body, but you look after it so that you can be around for a while. That's one of the motivations that I have. I want to be there for my family. I want to be there for my daughters. I want to have longevity. I don't want to shorten my life because of stupid decisions I'm doing by neglecting my body. So I encourage you to look after your body. It does impact your mental health. I hope you've understood that God cares about our bodies as much as our soul. It's not just spiritual things. No, God cares about our bodies and it impacts our soul. When we look after our bodies, we look after our mental health. And if you are struggling in this area today, please reach out and get help. And let us be there for one another. Let's stand and pray.